morning I'm even dressed like a blackberry cobbler. I made the mistake of telling my wife that as long as those blackberry bushes are producing blackberries, you might as well be eating cobbler. So every other day, 4 cups.
It's a tough life.
Yeah. I'm going to start out by just reading the scripture for today's service. But before I do that, I'd like to say that the children are going to get up and skedaddle and move on to the back, and then we'll expect them to come in a little bit later. So go ahead, you guys. Okay, so we'll be reading today from John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. I'll be reading from the New American Standard Bible. Yours might be a different version, or I'm not sure if it's going to come up on the screen or not. But on the 3rd day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does that have to do with us? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Whatever he says to you, do it." Now there were 6 stone water pots set there for the Jewish custom of purification, containing 20 or 30 gallons each. I'm imagining about that size. Pretty big. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the water pots with water," so they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Draw some out now and take it to the head waiter." So they took it to him. When the head waiter tasted the water, which had become wine, and did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, the head waiter called the bridegroom. He called the bridegroom over and said, "Hey," well, maybe he didn't say hey, but he said to him, "Every man serves the good wine first, and when the people have drunk freely, then he serves the poorer wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." This beginning of the signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. It's interesting when we read about a miracle or read the parables, there's all kinds of different applications you can draw from it. In fact, you can hear 20 different sermons on the same passage and get a different slant on each one. But it's not uncommon for there to be a main purpose of something, but it could be used for other things. Have you guys ever seen the TV show MacGyver? The 80s version with Richard Dean Anderson? He could use a paperclip for anything, right? Jumpstart a car, pick a lock. He could even use it to clip some papers together. So this is kind of the idea when we look at a passage in the Bible, and see that it could be used for many different purposes. But we can see the purpose of this particular passage and this miracle, in fact, all the miracles, because in verse 11 it says, "This beginning of his signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed him." So manifested means to make visible. It actually, mani comes from the Latin, means hand, and in Spanish we get mano, a mano, hand to hand. So manifested has the word hand in it, and fested is kind of the verb to strike. So it means to make an impression or a strike with the hand. So it's something that becomes visible and obvious to the senses. And so this was the purpose of the miracles, was to manifest Jesus' glory. And in fact, in the previous chapter, in John chapter 1, verse 14, John wrote that we saw his glory, glory as of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. And there are other instances of manifestations of glory in the Bible, and probably the most famous one is, of course, the account of creation, where God manifested his glory through creation. And we are created in his image, and we also have that tendency to want to create. In fact, a few years ago, there were about 100 scientists who studied the scriptures, and they looked at the account of when God took dust from the ground and formed man. And they figured that, they've learned a lot through the ages, right? And they've got lots of technology. They figured that if they could find that same dirt that God used to create Adam, they could do the same thing. So they got together and created a machine. They invented a machine that would take the dirt and process it, and that would pop a man. And they called this machine Make Our Man. Acronym is MOM. And so their idea was to get some dirt, put it in a MOM, and that would pop a man. And so, but they needed a couple things. First, they needed that same dirt that God used. So they searched the scriptures and found out that in Eden there were 4 rivers, and 2 of them were the Tigris and the Euphrates. And that those 2, they know where those are. Those are in Iraq. So after the war, when Iraq was opened up, these scientists went there and researched and found out where they thought Eden was, the exact location. And they calculated that over the years, all the floods had covered up where God had reached down about 20 feet. And so their machine was going to drill down into the soil and get to that same layer where God reached down. But they needed something else, like a sip of water, Kim. Please. This is not part of the story, but I guess I can move on. Thank you. And so, back to the story. They wanted God to be there to witness this. And so a group of them went up to Mount Sinai because they figured, God talked to Moses there. Maybe he's hanging out there and they can meet with him there. So they go up to Mount Sinai for 3 days. They're singing, they're calming down God, they're beating on drums, they're playing electric guitars. And after the 3rd day, a dark cloud comes down and a voice says, I am. Oh, God is here. So they say, God, look, you've given us lots of knowledge. You create us in your image. We're a creator as well. We want to demonstrate to you that we can create a man just like you did. And God said, well, how are you going to do this? They said, don't worry about the details. You just be there between the Tigris and the Euphrates and verify that a man has been created by man. So at the appointed time, they got there. And lots of media were there. And cameras were rolling. And they pressed the button to turn on MOM, Make Our Man machine. And they had to, drill down about 20 feet, like I said, into this, get this core sample. And just before that core sample tube hit the ground, God says, time out, no good. And he throws a penalty flag. He says, CYOD. And they're like, what? CYOD? Create your own dirt. Maybe more thought-provoking than funny. But that's the manifestation of glory back in the very beginning. And Jesus manifested his glory through miracles. On the 3rd day, we see in the setting is the wedding. There was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and Jesus was there, both disciples and he were there, and they were invited. So they were just sitting around waiting for things to happen. I was wondering what Nathaniel was thinking. He was one of the disciples that had come to Jesus, and when he approached Jesus originally, Jesus said, I knew you'd come. I saw you sitting beneath the fig tree. And Nathaniel was like, you weren't even there. How could you see that? If you could see that, you must be the Son of God. And Jesus said to him, you'll see greater things than these. And so that's kind of in the background, and we're going to see that he does see greater things than these. And the interesting point here is this wedding happened on the 3rd day, and also on the 3rd day of creation, to kind of tie into the story that I told. God created the fruit on the 3rd day, including the grapes. So there's a little connection there. But there was a problem, right? The wine ran out. And at a wedding in a day, that was bad news. And then the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. It's just a simple statement, right? But I think all of the women here, and maybe half the men, know what that statement meant. Every morning my wife and I would go out and let the chickens out. They can have run of the yard, their own enclosed yard. The birds are chirping in the trees, and a little foal scurries across the ground. It's cool, we're in the shade, and we're just looking, and she might say, "That chicken coop sure does smell." Just a statement, right? Out of the top of my head pops a little shovel. Oh, she wants me to clean the chicken coop. Same thing happening here. Mary says, they have no wine. Didn't ask him to do anything, but you know what's going on. So the solution was to get more wine. And Jesus says to her, "Woman, what does that have to do with us? My hour has not yet come." Now, I don't suggest you call your mom woman. Woman, get me some breakfast. It doesn't go over too well. But it wasn't really a negative or pejorative term. It was really, but it did kind of set a distance and reset the relationship. This isn't just a mother-son relationship. There's a difference here. And so he refers to her in that way. And he did this again when he was on the cross. When she was there and the Apostle John was there, he said, "Woman, behold your son," to John. And to John he said, "John, behold your mother," so that they would be taking care of each other. So the term woman is not, just saying that it's not a bad thing to somebody back in the day, but it did create some professional distance between the two. In verse 5, his mother, it didn't faze her that he said that. She just went on. She's going forward with the project, right? She says, whatever he says to you, to the servants, she looked at the servants and says, "Whatever he says to you, do it." Now there were 6 water pots set there for the Jewish custom of purification, containing 20 or 30 gallons each. Jesus said to them, "Fill the water pots with water," so they filled them up to the brim. I read one commentary that said they filled them up to the brim so that there could be no accusation of funny business, like dumping in some concentrate or anything like that. It was already full. There was nothing that could be added in there. And so after that, more wine became available. And he said to the servants, Jesus did, "Draw some out now and take it to the head waiter." So they took it to him. When the head waiter tasted the water, which had become wine, and he did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew. The head waiter called the bridegroom and said to him, "Every man serves the good wine first, and when the people have drunk freely, then he serves the poorer wine, but you have kept the good wine until now." So, what was Jesus supposed to do? Make cheap wine? I don't think so. He made some good stuff, and it was at least good to the taste and good to the smell. And it was through this miracle that his glory was manifested. The miracles are almost like somebody flashing their credentials, or if you go to a conference sometimes and you engage with people and they want to know, "Hey, can I have your business card?" Because they want to know if you're authorized to do business for your company, and they can tell by your title and they have your contact information. When Jesus did a miracle, it's like he was flashing his credentials. There's something special going on here. Not too many people can do this type of a thing. Moses did something similar. He turned his first miracle, like Jesus' first miracle, dealt with water. He turned water into blood. That was the first of the 10 plagues to free the Israelites from Egypt. And later on in the Last Supper, Jesus symbolically he says to his disciples, he's holding a cup of wine, he said, this wine is my blood, symbolically, and drink this in remembrance of me. So there's water, he changed water into wine, and then symbolically the wine into blood. And so when we think about this particular miracle, and other miracles as well, and we see that Jesus is manifesting his glory, and then it says the disciples believed in him. I think that's an important point, because that is actually the big deal here, is how does Christ manifest his glory in our lives, right? so if we're Christians, we're going to manifest the glory of Christ or Christ in our lives. And so I would challenge us who are Christians to think about those areas. If someone were looking at your life from the outside, say an angel or God or your neighbor, and they're watching you, are there particular areas in your life where they could say, you know, I see Jesus in that person, in those actions, in those words? We're all going to have those areas. Conversely, there are probably areas in our lives that we think, you know, Christ could be manifested a little bit more strongly in this area of my life. And so what is that maybe one area for this week to be thinking about where I could manifest Jesus more prominently in my life? And if you're not a Christian, this is a great opportunity for you, because you see that Jesus has demonstrated that he has the power to make change. And if he can make change from water into the wine, what can he do in your life if you would let him? You have to accept that and to receive that and to let him begin to manifest himself in your life. This is water, okay? Not white wine. When I was practicing, it took a little bit longer than it did here. And so I just want to close by saying that we're going to have a couple people up here praying. I think Dennis and Sharon, those are the names. If they could come up. They're not here today. So I need a couple volunteers to come up and be here for people. If you want to come up and pray. If you're a believer already, I would encourage you to come up and meet with this gentleman or somebody else. Perhaps, I won't call her woman because she's my mother, actually. My mother. That would be fantastic, because I want to give you an opportunity now, and while Dean comes up to lead us in a hymn, if you are a Christian and you want to make a public statement and pray with some individuals about rededicating portions of your life to Christ so that you can manifest his glory more so in your life, then I would encourage you to come up. And if you are wanting to be a new believer and you want to acknowledge that fact and you feel that what might be tension or butterflies in your stomach right now may be the Spirit of God moving within you to move your feet down these aisles and to have a prayer to accept Christ as your Savior.
Hymn number 8. Can you stand up and join? Praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation. Oh, my soul, praise Him, for He is the health and salvation. All ye who hear, now is His temple drawn near. Join me in glad praise to the Lord, who o'er all things so wonderfully created, shelters thee under his wings, yes, so gently sustains.